discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And in this video we're going to continue with Ukraine attack with drones on the Russian strategic airfields. I'll remind you that yesterday the Ukrainians carried out a special operation. Zelensky stated that the Ukrainians used more than 100 drones, and Ukrainian sources reported that around 40 aircrafts were damaged or even destroyed by the Ukrainian attack. And here is the video of how exactly the Ukrainians were attacking Russian aircrafts. Obviously, everything that you can see right now in front of your screens is a tragedy for the Russian Federation. This is not just a tragedy, this is a real humiliation of Russian forces, probably the biggest humiliation ever since the beginning of the 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. We haven't seen anything like this during this period of time. But today I would like to point your attention that this is not just the humiliation of Russian forces, of Russian complete absence of any possibilities to protect their strategical forces. This is also the hugest probably humiliation and the hugest destruction of the US reputation. First of all, of course, in front of Russian eyes. Of course, you can ask what is the connection between the United States of America and its reputation with the Russian Federation and this humiliation and Ukraine. Very simple, we will discuss this in details right now. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation provided us a very interesting article regarding that Ukraine attack. Yesterday, the Kiev regime committed a terrorist attack using FPV drones against airfields in the Murmansk, Irkutsk, Ivanovo, Ryazan and Amur regions. At military airfields in the Ivanovo, Ryazan and Amur regions, all terrorist attacks were repelled. In the Murmansk and Irkutsk regions, as a result of the launch of FPV drones from the territory located in the immediate vicinity of the airfields, several units of aircraft caught fire. The fires have been extinguished. There are no casualties among military personnel or civilian personnel. Some of the participants in the terrorist attack have been detained. So this is the statement of the Russian Federation. So again, where is the connection between US reputation and the Russian humiliation? The thing is that everything is not so simple. Everything is not so easy. And the thing is that between the Russian Federation and the United States of America, there is an agreement by the name of New START. New START agreement controlling strategic arms between the US and Russia. The New START treaty, signed by the United States and Russia in 2010, limits strategic offensive arms, capping deployed delivery systems at 700, including heavy bombers like the US B-52 and Russian Tu-160, and nuclear warheads at the level of 1,550 units. The next statement is the most important. Strategic bombers are positioned on open ramps at air bases such as Engels and Barksdale in the United States of America, as well as Russia's Alenia Murmansk region that was attacked yesterday and Belaya Irkutsk region that was also attacked yesterday. The next statement is the most important, enabling satellite imagery monitoring to ensure transparency and compliance. So this statement is very important. The Russians froze this statement in 2023, but the United States of America hasn't officially quit this treaty. So by the 1st of June of 2025, this treaty has full strength for the United States of America. And once again, according to this treaty, the Russian Federation must keep all their aircrafts in the open air. This treaty, if I would like to rephrase this treaty for better understanding. The meaning of positioned on open ramps at airbase means that the United States of America gives its security guarantees to the Russian strategic aircrafts that nobody in the world from the US side or from allies or from friends of the United States of America would ever attack these aircrafts due to this new START agreement. the United States of America, as well as the Russians from their side, gave each other something like security guarantees that nobody in the world would attack these aircrafts. And Zelensky, by his attack yesterday, violated this agreement. And he put Trump and the United States of America not in a very favorable position. And this is exactly the reason why yesterday we heard so many statements and so many interesting articles regarding the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. I'll remind that yesterday Axios reported that the Ukrainians warned Trump about this planned attack. So that the United States of America, under this treaty of New START, they were told by Ukraine that they would try to attack these airfields. And obviously this is a very, very big problem. The White House was unaware of the Ukrainian drone attack on Russian military airfields, SBS News reports, citing sources in the US administration. Earlier, the Axios portal wrote, citing a Ukrainian official, that Kiev had notified the Trump administration in advance of the attack on Russia. So this is the most important thing, that there is a treaty agreement between Russia and the United States of America, and the Russians were following this agreement for 100% by positioning their aircrafts in the open air. And Ukraine violated this agreement, and obviously in the world, when talking about parties, about sides, Ukraine is on the side of the United States of America. And what is going to be next is very interesting situation. Obviously, the Russians from this very moment will not trust even a single word of the United States of America, especially of Donald Trump, until they resolve all issues, all root causes the problem. And the root causes that caused the problem is obviously the side who violated this agreement from the side of the United States of America. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. But before we start, several more statements and articles made by Zelensky. 117 drones were used to strike Russian air bases. Zelensky confirms that Kiev is behind the terrorist attack. Another important thing, that the composition of the Ukrainian delegation, we will discuss this in a minute. Volodymyr Zelensky stated that a year, 6 months and 9 days passed from the planning to the implementation of the Operation Spiderweb, which involving strikes the basis of the strategic aviation of the Russian airspace forces. And this is the main executor, this is the main person who created this operation. The chief of Ukrainian Special Service, Vasily Maluk, posted a photo of the satellite imagery provided by the Western allies during the web special operation. Once again, these web pictures were made by US satellites, maybe not by US satellite, but obviously under this new, let's say, START agreement. So because according to this new START agreement, the United States of America had the right to make pictures of these photos, and we see that these photos later were transferred to Ukraine. So obviously the situation is very critical, and it's even bigger, more critical for US reputation than even for the Russian humiliation, because the Russians, this is not their fault. Obviously they were following a letter of the law, a letter of agreement between the United States of the Russian Federation, and it was the US side to create secure zone around Russian airfields. But we see that the United States of America failed in doing this, and this is huge losses in their reputation. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. But first of all, the root causes, the problems should be eliminated, and now everybody understand this. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the northeastern part of Ukraine, where the Russians continue their offensive operation despite all problems and all these things. And during the previous 24 hours, according to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to answer the village of Kondrativka. First, we got report this yesterday by several neutral mappers. The Russians answered the most northern part of the settlement and today we got additional reports that, according to information we have, the Russians finished the battle for the settlement completely. So we expect that today the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information, and we're gonna get additional changes on the ground. We will color this territory in the Russian favor. Furthermore, according to information we have, right before we started making this video, we got additional changes on the maps of different very reliable sources, and currently the Russians operate somewhere along this red line. So every single settlement to the north of this big Sumy forest is about to be taken by the Russians. At the same time, according to information we have, the Ukrainians continue their attempts to attack the settlement of Tetkina. Today, according to information we have, the Ukrainians managed to take under control several tree lines between the villages of Zarya, Popovo, Ležachi, and Tetkina, trying to get for as close as possible to the main supply lines and to cut the village from the mainland, which will allow the Ukrainians in the future to begin offensive with the purpose to seize complete control over the village. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk direction, more precisely in the southern Kupiansk direction. During the previous night, we got very important geolocation that was published by the Ukrainian sources. Let's take a look at this video, and in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in this area with FPV drones, and there are a lots of episodes, as you can see, and many of these episodes were geolocated. And when we return back to map, 2 episodes were geolocated. First one was geolocated in this point, and the second one was geolocated in this area. So based on this video, we see that the Russians managed to answer the village by the name of Karpovka, and currently, by the beginning of the 6th of February of 2020, 2nd of June of 2025, the Russians established control for over more than 50% of the village, and the Russians continue advancing. The most important from this geolocation is that the Russians established control not just over the northeastern part of the settlement. The Russians, as you can see, crossed the river of Nitrius, and currently the clashes are taking place on the Ukrainian side of the river, which is obviously something like a breakthrough. Telling the truth, even I didn't expect that the Russians were able to cross the river of Nitrius and to begin advancing on the Ukrainian side, which means that the situation is much more difficult for Ukrainians than I thought, and the situation, telling the truth, is very critical. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. The most interesting and the most important updates are coming from the settlement by the name of Zarya. Today, the Russian sources published this video where we can see how several groups of Russian troops raised Russia's flags in different parts of the settlement. During this video, we can see at least 2 episodes, 2 places where the Russians raised their flags. The first flag was raised in the most northern part of the settlement. The second one was raised in the central and in the southern part. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map by coloring the settlement of Zarya in Russian favor. But as you can see, we haven't colored the entire settlement because we still haven't received anything from the northeastern parts of this village. So this is the situation, for example, by the end of the 1st of June of 2025, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 2nd of June of 2025. We are waiting for additional updates from this part of the village, but several pro-Russian resources adjusted these territories also in Russian favor. So today, several pro-Russian very reliable resources reported that the village of Zarya was taken by the Russians completely. We are waiting for additional details and delegations, and most likely today the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation will also confirm this information. Furthermore, and very important, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the western part of the settlement of Yablunovka, trying to attack Ukrainians from the west in the eastern direction. Today we had lots of geolocations exactly from this area, and these geolocations first of all confirm Russian control over this stronghold in the vicinity of these 3 lines. We have no doubts about this right now because we have FPV drone attack on Russian soldier there. And we have Russian attacks in the western part of Yablunovka, where the Russians are trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory. And Ukrainians, in these videos, there are lots of episodes from this area that Ukrainians were retreating from the western part in the direction of the central part of the city of Yablunovka, village of Yablunovka. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians advance in the city of Chasavyar, taking under control additional positions. So the battle for the city of Chasavyar is also about to be finished. So as you can see, the situation is very difficult for Ukrainians, the situation is very difficult for the Russians, and the situation is very difficult for the United States of America. And another important video. Yesterday, the Russians carry out very powerful Iskander strike on the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. In this video, we can see how the Russians managed to discover the concentration of Ukrainian forces, and then the Russians attacked this territory with Iskander missile. The sources reported that Ukrainians lost hugest and biggest losses ever, and as after this attack, I'll remind you that Ukrainian general, the head of infantry army, was forced to abandon and to quit his position. And that's it.